them ideas, debate possible solutions, and their job then is to, if they hear anything compelling, they report back to the full commission and advise them on how to proceed. In this case, on issues affecting tribes and tribal communities. So the committee was formed over a year ago now, and we've had several agenda items, but the one we've been working and focusing on lately has been pursuant to Governor Jerry Brown's Executive Order B 1011. Was asking all agencies to adopt consultation policies for working with the tribes. And this committee's been working on that since about a year ago was when we started in earnest in Solvang on developing a consultation policy. We've had 3 tribal committees working on this, all the way from Solvang up to Fortuna over the last year. The committee provided their draft consultation policy to the full commission at their December 3rd meeting in Van Nuys this last year. And we did have a discussion. The commission had a full discussion of the policy at their February 11th meeting in Sacramento. And at that meeting, Commissioner Hostler-Carmison requested that we make one last opportunity for the tribes and public to comment on it. And that's what we're here today for. And then we'll report back to the commission actually tomorrow if we've got anything significant that we need to work on. Otherwise, the plan is to schedule this for possible adoption at the June commission meeting in Mammoth. The other item on our agenda today is something that actually precipitated the committee formally, which was when the commission was going through the process of developing and adopting marine protected areas, particularly on the North Coast. The issue of impacts to tribes and tribal communities came up, and the commission developed a way to accommodate or allow for continued use of tribes in some types of marine protected areas, particularly conservation areas, well, any MPA other than a reserve. And at that time, several tribes who had already gone through this process but didn't really have that concept to work with asked to be reconsidered for similar kind of accommodations in both central, southern, and north central California. And that's really what the second agenda about is look at those requests and figure out how do we proceed with that in an orderly, hopefully efficient way. Forward. So are there any questions or any other agenda items that the chairs want to add? Or with that, I think, Mary, do we have handouts for the policy?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if anybody needs to see it, there's copies. It's a one-pager. It's not a long one. And I'll give a little more background. So the Fish and Game Commission and the Department of Fish and Wildlife are 2 agencies joined at the hip. The Department of Fish and Wildlife implements the programs and the regulations that the Commission adopts, and the Commission promulgates the regulations for the Department. And so we're co-joined with the Department. The Department approved its consultation policy not too long ago, or it's in its final draft. It is a much more mechanical, procedure-heavy consultation policy. In the process of developing this draft commission policy, what we heard from the tribes that participated, the individuals, what we heard was all that detail and process is great, but what we really want to do is encourage early communication and including the tribes in the development phase of the concept rather than waiting until the agencies develop the solution and ask the tribes what they think. They felt that was really coming in at the 11th inning and really not the spirit of working together. So what you'll see, because of that feedback, you'll see our draft policy is really pointed towards communication. In other words, early communication and consultation on the issue, and invite the tribes into the design of a solution rather than asking what they think about a solution that was designed without them. And we've gotten some good feedback on that, but so that's what this policy fundamentally is very different than the department's. But for a practical matter, when a tribe has an issue, let's say it's alimony regulations, because of how the department and the commission work, we're probably going to bring in both parties, the department because it's the one that enforces and manages the resource, and the commission because it's the one that would promulgate any regulations that might come about. So I see it as a three-way partnership when we work on these things. So when the tribe work with DFW and the commission, they actually have two policies that we'll be working with, which is a little awkward, but also why I think the commission's been leaning towards more of a conceptual approach, how we should be working together, rather than creating yet another very mechanical, detailed process kind of consultation policy. So I see them as complementing each other rather than duplicating each other. So that's kind of my background on it.
I agree something, and I think what really helps is when a tribal leader or a tribal staff person comes to me, I want to be able to say, well, we're going to look into this and we're going to help you, we're going to talk to the department, and we're going to make sure that there's follow-up and follow-through, because so many times it gets lost somewhere in the process. So for me, the communication and collaboration means seeing something through until the tribe feels the resolution. The other thing I wanted to say is there was a letter that was sent out by Samke requesting each tribe to respond. I don't know if we've gotten any responses so far. That letter went out to tribal chairs on March 25th. So, Mary, have you received any responses on that?
I don't believe we have. No, we have not.
You still have time, though. Like I said, we'll be talking about it again on Thursday, or actually tomorrow, I guess. And then in June, of course, we have people saying comments to us.
Jeff, you say that that letter just went out?
Right.
All right.
It was sent on March 25th.
Okay.
The federally recognized tribe went out earlier. Just so you know, we had trouble getting the list for the non-federally recognized. The Native American Heritage Council was having issues with their list, so that only went out very recently. But the federally recognized went out a while ago. And again, we're really encouraging this as an opportunity because of keeping current. What we're really encouraging is tribes to go to our website and sign up on the listserv for the tribal committee, so that automatically, electronically, we send stuff out that way. Otherwise, we're having a lot of trouble keeping lists current. We're trying to figure out more efficient ways to make sure that the tribes can kind of take a role of making sure we get their latest contacts and it goes to the right person or persons. More than one person to try to sign up to get information, so that's kind of up to the tribe.
So one thing, Samke and Jackie, I thought might be worth mentioning is that this, even though this is titled a tribal consultation policy, it's actually more than that, because paragraph number 2 in particular implies that we will pursue and enter into partnerships and MOUs that govern how we manage resources with the tribes. That's more than just consultation, that's actually working together. And it opens up a whole new front, a whole new area and a whole new way of managing resources in some cases. So it's worth, you know, if I were working for tribal, I'd want to comment on that in particular, because we've heard many times requests for, you know, that kind of co-management from tribal folks. And it's one of the things that I think, of course, the devil's in the detail, and how we're going to do that is going to be really interesting, and it's going to differ in different areas, I suppose. But nonetheless, I think that's probably the most significant thing in here.
Yeah.
Not just how we're going to let people know what we're already doing, but how we're going to work together.
Yeah, so for example, we've been trying to work with the department in the Smith River Tribe to deal with this elk depredation problem. And we're looking at a combination of streamlining depredation and or how we handle the unfortunate animals that have to be destroyed for food, just kind of making that more efficient and self-governing rather than us having to be involved, come up with a plan. All right, we've got an ongoing problem. We should have a process by which we can just automatically deal with it. We don't have to keep visiting it over and over again, because that just isn't efficient. Everybody's busy, so everyone's got their priorities. So can we make these processes, set up a relationship, a process, or an agreement, so that we don't have to huddle up and try and problem out of nowhere. I think that's going to be really helpful to have in a lot of these areas. But it's going to be a learning process for the department. Any comments, any thoughts on the policy from the audience so far?
A question about floor training. Can you talk about the examples or types of training that you guys have written?
There's two fundamental types. One, of course, is tribes need to teach us how to most effectively work with the tribes and what the issues are, and help understand what the solutions might be in a way that we understand. But in particular, and Mr. Elgin and I were talking about this before the meeting started, is helping the tribes understand how we do business, so they can be more effective in engaging our process, so they don't come in too late, don't come in asking for the wrong things or talking to the wrong people. It's just, you know, we're machinery, whether you like it or not. We are a bureaucracy, and so we are more than willing to come and talk to tribes and give them kind of basic, if you want a rule change, if you have a problem, here's what you have to work with, here's the steps, provide contacts, hotlines, whatever, to help the tribes kind of communicate the problem, and also in a way so that we can figure out how to respond in a way that, you know, doesn't take 10 years. So that's kind of, because most folks, non-tribal life, have no idea how to do business. And that's, we see a lot of frustration. People come to the commission and say, well, just do it. And not so simple. So that's kind of what the training, kind of both ways, but we were trying to emphasize we're more than willing to help try to figure out how to work with this system. Particularly, you know, whether it's hunting and fishing regulations, which is the commission's primary responsibility.
We've also talked about a workshop.
Yes.
Format where we partnered with Fish and Wildlife, and people could go to the various booths or tables and talk to that department. Somebody would show the process of how things goes on, just saying, and walk through them with the tribal community, and the rulemaking calendar, explain that. You know, there's a lot of details involved in how things work, and so we could do an event or a workshop that was at least a day. Let's focus on that. We've talked about having something during the Native American Day, but I think that could be a brief snapshot. But I'd still like to do a one-day conference and helping everyone understand how it works.
I think it's a great idea. Just that. I mean, I learned a lot before this meeting, and and I think that if we could avail all tribes that take the time to come out and do this training, it would help us all.
You know, on that note, the department has a tradition of going to its constituents, and what they usually do that by going to the big hunting and fishing shows. It's always irritated me that they go out to one set of constituents only. They don't go to the Native American Day. They don't go to the, you know, the big environmental caucuses. They go out to the hunting and fishing shows, which is just one of many constituents for the department. So I think we ought to encourage the department to get out to these other jamborees. And
that's a two-way street too. It would be incumbent upon the tribes to invite you to come. And we will.
Especially the welcome, the salmon ceremonies, those are particularly interesting. Those of us that like to eat salmon.
We'd love to have come up and see the new coho salmon that we plant each year and that comes back now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Reg, it would be wonderful if you would host a tribal committee meeting.
I'd love to.
And we could do a field trip with
You
coordination.
give me some dates and we'll, we'd love to have you. I mean, just let me tell you, on behalf of our tribe, and behalf of our new tribal chairman, I would invite you.
That'd be great. But the more, you know, the department's leadership goes to these red ball shows and so forth. They turn out the brass for those things.
Oh, yeah.
The governor's executive order isn't going to do much unless the agencies actually pay attention to it and pay attention to implementing it. Get their people out into the field to interact with the tribes, right? Otherwise, it's just a paper executive order. So this has been a sort of pet peeve of mine for a while. Not just about tribes, but about the other constituents that, you know, we tend to think, in the past, the commissions tended to think of hunters and fishermen as our main constituents. That's not always the case. We actually, our job is to be the best stewards of wildlife on behalf of all Californians, including the tribes.
True.
And that's still a new concept in some parts of the department. So.
Just a point of interest, so that you'll know, our tribe has been successful in getting, for the fourth time in America, land taken without doing just compensation returned to us. So we have 27 acres of our tribal ancestral land, where they took 88,400 acres and gave us 75 acres in exchange and called it even. But we got 27 acres of that back, and in that area, now, we've built a brush arbor where we will have, and are continuing to have, our traditional dances and like that. Now, we only have it on lease for 125 years, but we don't look at land as real estate. We've got it, and so we're utilizing it as best we can. The commanding general of the 6th Army Corps of Engineers is coming out at the end of this month to see this relationship develop between tribes and the Army Corps of Engineers. And then the commanding general of the division is coming out and sometime in June. Maybe either of those dates. I know there will be representatives of the Army Corps of Engineers, there will be representatives of the Department of Fish and Game, of the Sonoma County Water Agency, the Sonoma County Board of Supervisors, the different state politicians that we have, and perhaps we'll have a federal representative as well. But maybe this might be one of the times that we could host an invite. You know, it might be appropriate, and we could show you this land that was given back to us, our tribal ancestral land. It's not holy land, but it comes as close to what you want to know as being homeland.
What date is that, Rich?
I'll find out. I'll certainly let you know.
So the good news is I have been working with the governor's tribal liaison's office, and we have been talking to that group about a commission presence at the Native American Day in September, hosting a table so that we can introduce ourselves to tribes and ask basic questions.
Have you talked to Cynthia?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good.
So
there
they think that's a good idea. So
where is this event?
At the Capitol. They have all kinds of booths set up. So the idea is we would have a little booth that we can answer questions, provide basic information. capture concerns from various tribal folks of things that have been bothering them that we might be able to resolve or deal with. So that's kind of an initial step. And then, as Jackie was mentioning, we've also been talking with the department and staff about hosting an annual planning meeting in terms of regulations that the commission's planning on doing, so that the tribes can see, all right, here's all the fishing and hunting and listing issues. Are you interested in any of these? So they can kind of earmark them so they know when it's happening, be involved early on, and or are there things that the tribes want us to try and tackle as far as hunting and fishing regulations, and put that on the calendar for the year. So kind of like an annual work planning effort, but just with the tribe. Give them a chance to work with us and figure out what we're going to do for the next year.
Maybe I can host you and show you how to cook some of these
Purloin,
abalone, and things, and seaweed and acorns and things like that. As
long as they taste good, Reg.
I believe so. Yeah.
He's a chef.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
In one of my past lives, I was a chef instructor. I was a pastry chef instructor. But I used acorn gatos in Monterey to go with seaweed and acorn mush too.
I had some concern with number 3 under record keeping. On the federal side, with the government consultation, those records are protected by FOIA, I believe.
That's true.
And so I feel that there needs to be something in here about, the actual components of this policy in consultation to safeguard traditional knowledge or any of those types of things. That's a hot ticket item right now on a national scale, with the protection of traditional knowledge and willing for collaborative efforts on behalf of tribes. They're not going to most likely want to move forward on individual collaboration of things if their information is going to be not known by them. So if there's a way to put in here formal consultation in that record keeping is bound to those two groups, or those two on that level. I'm just saying, that's a concern that I feel that is going to be brought forward, and the lack of willingness for collaboration if we want a protection mechanism in place for tribes to share.
Yeah, so the bad news under state law, it's not protected. So
The RA doesn't mirror report.
no, there's no protections for tribal knowledge, at least the kind of knowledge we would get. So the reason it's worded this way is we're not going to keep records of that kind of information because we can't do it. The good news is the governor's office is aware of that. Cynthia Gomez, we had a long conversation with her about this issue, and they're looking at ways to create that kind of protection, but it's going to require legislation. But we can't offer that right now, so basically our advice is if it's information you want protected, do not give it to us, and we will not keep it. This is more for, I'm taking notes here, we get letters, requests, that's the kind of record keeping we're here. But to your point, is if at such point that we can offer that kind of protection, we would amend this and add that in here. But right now, I don't want to say something like that because I can't actually offer it. I just want it sounds good.
Also to that end, because I like to think, because of you, the feds are finally getting the word that maybe it's high time that they collaborated with Indian tribes in California as well. They had a series of educational meetings for them throughout this state over this past year. I got a chance to go to one of those meetings in Sacramento the day before or the day after the UFU meeting in Sacramento. And I went to 2800 Cottage Way, and they are coming along almost kicking and screaming to enter into this at least professed interest in collaboration with Indian tribes, and I think the word came down on high from them too, but we haven't heard from them in a while, but.
Well, this is the federal government. This, as you guys know, this would not be the first time that California showed the way for other agencies, other governments. What starts here doesn't stay here. That's why people spend so much time working on things in California, because they know what starts here isn't going to stay here. It spreads. It spreads to the federal government. We just had an example of that. Did you see what the Pacific Council, Fishery Management Council did on forage fish? It mirrored our forage fish policy we adopted 2 years ago. And you better believe that what we did had an influence on that. So, yeah, that's great to hear another example.
Well, I gently reminded them of what we were up to. You know, it was.
I get
I bet you did.
No,
Oh, really?
but you do bring up a really good point, is a lot of what we'll be doing here under this policy really is going to require the collaboration with the federal agencies, particularly Forest Service and Fish and Wildlife Service.
And Park Service.
And Park Service, true. And I've tried, but what I've learned is they're waiting for you to ask so they can come meet with me. They will not do that independently, and I get that now. But we need them at the table too. So, for example, the Karuk are interested in getting an allocation of elk for tribal ceremonies and some subsistence, but on federal land. So the odd thing is the state controls the wildlife, but the feds control the land. For that deal to ultimately work, I'm going to need the Forest Service to join us with the crew to have that kind of conversation and how to work it out. But I'm actually going to need the tribe's help to get the feds there, because they won't respond to me.
So let me give you some good news. We've got young leadership coming right here that is not simply awestruck at the enormity of the feds, that has good heart, particular enough to say what she means, you know. So old guys like me are just old guys like me, but young people, you know, will be able to sit before not only people that listen, but people that hear what you have to say, and so I think there's nothing but good going forward.
Can I ask a question? I'm curious whether you guys have tried doing like an online forum, like a meeting like this, but via webinar or something, so people could, without spending, you know, people coming from the north and the south driving 5 to 8 hours to get here. It just improves accessibility.
So ordinarily, our full commission meetings are webcast.
Okay.
So they're video webcast. If you were here tomorrow, you would see this room full of people. It would all be electrified, and there'd be cameras everywhere. And Sonky would remind you that whatever you say when you're testifying is you know, perpetually recorded, and watch what you say. But we haven't been able to do that for our committee meetings for a couple of reasons. One, it's expensive. So we try to audio record some of our committee meetings, although not this one. And two, we actually want to preserve the informal nature of these committee meetings, so we can have a back and forth and ask questions. And you don't have to, you know, testify or submit your questions ahead of time or any of that stuff. And it's really worked well for our Marine Resources Committee and now the new Wildlife Resources Committee, where we can go deeper on issues in an informal manner rather than, and you have some back and forth rather than just people talking from the podium, you know.
Maybe I could make a comment about that too. I've been going to meetings for a while, you know, over the past 50 years, and just recently, you know, we have this friendly forum that listens to what we have to say. It's taken a while to get here, you know, just to let you know. But we have a tribal chairman that sits on this commission, Department of Fish and Game and Wildlife in California. A tribal chairman. Think about that. We come a long way. And they're listening to what we have to say, and they're encouraging us to do this. They're not stifling us with protocol and rules. And so, while what you say is right, it's expensive to go 8 hours a day, or, you know, and travel to a meeting like this. But we're